Hey, it's John Mitchell and you're watching Bubble TV. This is where I try and help you achieve your goals in VCE, and this is our first version of 2014's Whiteboard Wednesday, where I try and answer your questions. And today's question comes from YouTube, from Daniel. And he writes, is there anything major that I should be doing before the first SAC? I've covered everything in general, I'm just wondering if I've missed something. That's a really great question, Daniel, and it's one that a lot of students have, especially when it's their first Unit 3 and 4 subject. They're not quite sure, they've got these big SACs coming up and they're not exactly sure, have they covered everything, or how do they actually prepare for SACs and then later on for their exams. And it's something that you really need to get right and you need to work on throughout the year. So the content is one thing, but then learning how to revise and study is another thing. So to answer your question, let's have a look at a couple of things. So first of all, you should have a copy of this. Now this is the study design for Unit 3-4 Business Management. Well, it's actually for Unit 1, 2, 3 and 4 Business Management. But here, you can see here it's got Outcome 1, and then Key Knowledge, and it's got some dot points. And this continues on, this is just one page, this continues on and on and on. And you can make sure that you've covered everything on a particular outcome if you can cover all these dot points. And that's really important. So I get my students to cut this out and stick it, for each outcome, stick it in their exercise book or whatever they're working from at the very start, and then as we go along they tick it off, and then that gives them a surety that they've covered everything that needs to be covered. Now in terms of preparing for SACs, once you've got all those dot points and you know the content, then you've got to figure out, well, how do I actually study? And this is a very individual thing, but I'm going to give you a couple of things that might really help you and hopefully others. So we were lucky enough last year to have a student score a 50 in business, and he was a year 11, so he's in year 12 this year. And so I spoke to him this year and said, look, Bradley, what was it exactly that you did that really helped you in your studies? And these are a couple of things that he went through. And the first was that he summarised every single night. Now I went into my year 12s this year and told them exactly that, and they didn't believe me. They said, that's not possible, no one can summarise every night. Now I'm not telling you that you have to summarise every night, I'm just telling you what he did. So in terms of summaries, he would go to the VCAA website, he'd use his textbooks, he'd use his notes from class, notes from the videos of Teaching Bubble, all those kind of things. And he would get a concept, and then he'd get the main key points, and at the start he would just start to summarise them. And by the end of the year, he could summarise them without looking at his notes. Now, another thing that, well, with his summaries, what he tended to do then was, we said, well, what happens if you've summarised everything? And he said, well, I just re-summarise. So he would make sure that he would summarise every single night. And number 3, and this is another thing Bradley did, was that he would explain it aloud. Once a week, or if he couldn't, once a fortnight, he would get his brother to ask him a question. He'd just get the textbook open and ask a question about a particular topic, whether it be, Locke's theory or Maslow's theory or positive or negative contributions to the economy, whatever it may be, and he would try and explain that concept to him. Now he knew it did a couple of things. One, if he couldn't explain it, he knew he had to do some work on it. And what I tell my students, don't underestimate the power of being able to explain something to someone. And I say to them, if you can't explain it, you don't know it. So if you don't know it, that means you need to go back and do some work, because it's really easy to read notes and go, yeah, I know that, I know that, I know that. If you can't write it and you can't talk about it, you don't know it. So you need to do some work. And the second thing was that it taught him what he knew and what he didn't know. So that's knowledge that's crucial, because as soon as you go, well, hang on, I need to do some work on that, that's knowledge that you need, rather than just going, yeah, I think I know that. So it's really important to don't ever underestimate being able to speak it and explain it. If you've got no one that's going to ask you questions, ask yourself the questions and explain it to your dog or to a photo on your wall. It doesn't matter. You just need to be able to explain something, and that will really help you with your understanding. So it helps you know what you know and what you don't know, and then it also helps consolidate your learning. So the further, he did that once a week, and if he couldn't, he would do it at least once a fortnight. And the fourth thing that I'd encourage you to do is to actually try some practice questions. The VCAA website is a fantastic website that gives you all the past exam papers, so you can go through all the questions, gives you the examiner's reports on how students did, etc., etc. So that's really important to do. Now, just for example, this is last year's exam, and so here's a question from last year's exam. Explain what is meant by work-life balance and conditions of employment and refer to information from this stimulus material. So, pretty straightforward question, worth 4 marks. Now there's a couple of things you need to be careful of. Practice questions are great and because they help consolidate your understanding, but it's not often that you get the exact same question. Sometimes that might come up. So for example, in last year's exam, centralised and decentralised employee relations system, that's an exact question that had come up before. But a question like this, it's not always going to be the same. So it's important to do a question like that, but then if you want to really challenge yourself, change it a little bit yourself. So instead of work-life balance, some of the other elements that are written in the study design are conditions of employment. So you might change work-life balance and conditions of employment to job security and occupational health and safety, because they're the other two that are listed in the study design. And so you might try and answer the question on that. Also, rather than explain, you might change the question to discuss or to evaluate or to analyse or something more difficult. So it's good to do these questions, but remember the scenario will be different. So this case study will be different in next year's exam. It's going to be different in your SAC. So change things up a little bit and change the scenario, get an article from the paper or change this question entirely. So Daniel, that's my answer to your question. I hope it really helps you. And remember to let us know how your first SAC went. We'd be really interested to find out. Now it's over to all you guys. What we want to do is try and find out, what do you do before you study for SACs and exams? What techniques have really helped you? If we can get a whole community of answers together, that will really help other students, and that would be fantastic. So let us know what you do to prepare for SACs and exams. Then come over to teachingbubble.com/blog and type your answer into the comment section. That's where all the great conversation happens. If you like this video and think it will help you, then like it, and please, we'd love you to share it with all your friends. And if you want even more resources to help you achieve your goals in VCE this year, then come and check us out at teachingbubble.com. Continue to stay focused on your goals and dreams. Work hard and don't be scared to ask for help. You really can achieve what you set your mind to. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time on Bubble TV.
Revision lectures are coming up. Want in? For more information, come over to teachingbubble.com.